Alrighty. Hey everyone, how you doing? How's your indie week going? Good? Cool. Congratulations to making it in real life. Nuts, huh? Well, today's panel is called Fulfillment is Tough. The idea being that all of you have great records to put out, no doubt, and the landscape is constantly changing. Some folks here may never have put a record out or are just starting to put records out, and other of you maybe veterans, but it's all changing, and we hope what this discussion gets into today, we'll get into is a few solutions, a few case studies of what people have done to navigate these choppy waters. Between us here, we have folks who sell directly to fans. They might fulfill records on behalf of other labels. They do their own label fulfillment. They work with distributors, and they act as fulfillment companies on behalf of independent labels and independent artists. So a lot of range covered here. I'm Andrew. I'm the Director of Artists and Labels at Bandcamp. And joining me here today in this order.
Hello, I'm Cam Sarrett. I head up physical at Third Man in Nashville.
I'm Dan, and I'm Managing Director at Ochre. We're a e-commerce services company working with the music industry, and we help clients in lots of ways with their retail, with their fulfillment, and we run our own warehousing in the UK and work with a lot of different warehouses around the world as well, with a network that we've built of different partners.
I'm Rebecca. I do online sales for Sub Pop Records, specifically D2C.
Thanks. So let's pretend we're in a band, right? And we just finished our album, and it's amazing. It's the best thing since sliced bread. What are we talking about? What's the next step? And as a label or partner turning to that artist, what do we prepare them for first? I guess let's start with because it's kind of the beginning of the chain, what's the turnaround time that we're thinking about? If an artist is like, hey, finish my album, we're going to get it out in like 3 weeks, right? What's the bad news? What's a reasonable amount of lead time between albums finished in studio, album is actually in fans' hands? And what are the kind of, if there's maybe 3 or 4 key events in the manufacturing and fulfillment chain that you need to tell the artist about, what would those be?
Go ahead. Well, I feel like probably someone from the label side should start first.
Okay.
We come in a bit later.
Yeah. Well, I'll jump in on this one. I mean, 9 months to a year, which is what no one in the world wants to hear when they're putting out a new album. So I'm sorry, like bandmates, that sucks.
Man.
But that's how it goes. I would say the biggest points that we'd want to hit, I mean, first is contract. Just get the legal taken care of. First things first, get that out of the way. Hit, quantity projections, art, design, and then just kind of figure out, like, set up a schedule for like how everything is going to go. Turnaround times factored in there for physical production by format. That's like the main ones for us anyway.
Rebecca, both companies do some pretty cool packaging. I'm sure 9 to 12 months is maybe on the slimmer side for some of those more extravagant packages that you do. And I also, with all the delays that everyone's been experiencing, I'm guessing that's hopeful. And there are also dates that are a lot longer than that.
Totally. I think in the last couple of years, starting the conversation about artwork a lot sooner has been a big thing for us, like sometimes even a year before, and just kind of collaborating more with the artist that way, which has become a positive thing, because then it's a little less kind of churning it out and a little more, okay, if we can't do this, we can get a little creative. Can we use a different type of paper? Can we do something, a little more deluxe, a little less deluxe, kind of working and trying to make something cool rather than reacting to what's going on. Now we have the foresight to kind of plan ahead a little and use that time a little more wisely.
What have been the most difficult things to do, especially bearing in mind supply chain issues and whatever else has come up in the creating of physical products during everything from Brexit to lockdowns? What are the most difficult things that you've had to face while making stuff in the last couple of years?
I feel like it's been kind of like the surprises that have popped up, like a paper shortage kind of coming out of nowhere. It's like no one could have planned for that, but just, yeah, again, finding new ways. Like if we can't get a specific type of paper, can we print something on the paper that makes it look like the paper we're trying to get? Just kind of, trying to find loopholes and ways around that.
Right.
Yeah, I would say like, well, if you're working with, some kind of shortage or something, or you don't have what you want available, working with the artist and kind of getting the essence of what they wanted that to be in the first place, and then maybe finding other solutions that would work. But I totally agree with the art coming at the forefront. That's been a big change for us too, especially with LP jackets. Like we use Stoughton for a lot, and their turnaround is 6 months, like best case scenario for our projects. Then it ships from California to Detroit in our case. So that's been kind of a new challenge for us.
What's the piece of the puzzle that takes the longest to make? So you've decided on the artwork. Which bit, do you need to schedule first and hope that then that gets delivered in time for everything else to kind of fall in place?
I'd say labels.
Really?
The label on like if we're talking vinyl, and that's primarily what we're doing that has such a long lead time. We do that first so that we can. There's no holdups for pressing.
Sure, that makes sense.
That's going to be the longest thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think just making sure we have everything ready to go so that when it is ready to go to press, we're not like waiting on one aspect of it, just so we have everything right up front.
I don't know if anyone's had the chance to go to Third Man, but they have a cool store in their crazy Willy Wonka of a warehouse. They make all kinds of stuff. You must have had to come up with some bizarre solutions for things that you thought you could have. I mean, there's everything from turntables to sweatshirts to books and whatever else in there.
Yeah, totally. I mean, like, apart from just like getting product, I feel like getting product is one thing, but then like everything else that goes with it, whether it's like a cardboard box shortage or like your main supplier is out of the correct thickness or whatever for those boxes, or more intentional choices like wanting to use dunnage or like craft paper filler or something that's like a little more eco-friendly as opposed to like bubble wrap, which is also crazy expensive. So yeah,
they gotta get the air in there.
Yeah.
So before we get to Dan, for the two of you, what are the pieces to the puzzle that you rely most heavily on other folks for that has tended to break in the last couple of years when it comes to the actual getting your vinyl out there? Which bits are difficult for labels of your size? You got the records, you're trying to get them out there. What's broken and difficult to deal with now?
I don't know. I mean,
well, we had a big thing with like USPS delays and just our customer base being used to a specific time and like turnaround time and whatnot. And so just being very communicative with that. And now we do a lot more outreach to our customers ahead of time, letting them know if it's a slight delay and just being very mindful of that and adding wording to our site. I feel like that was a big one. That was like, even if we had it in our warehouse in time, getting it out into the fans in a certain amount of time was kind of out of our hands at that point, and it was kind of hard to navigate.
Yeah, it's too bad no one from USPS is here, but I don't think they're A2IM members. Well, Dan, I was hoping you might be able to explain to us, because your company handles fulfillment for a lot of different sized artists and labels, different points in their careers. Are there challenges that are different for artists burgeoning versus, label like Warp, established artists?
So I suppose I wouldn't necessarily say it's about the size of the label. It's more about what you're trying to do and the size of the project. So if you've got something where it's a big campaign, there's going to be a lot of units, then you're probably going to end up more complexity. So complexity is going to come from trying to ship from more different places, and then you've got to get the stock to those different places. You've got to ensure that if we're talking back to the sort of lead times question, with that, you've got to have an awareness of where the lead times from manufacture to all your distribution hubs out to your fulfillment warehouses, and then making choices on your timelines based on that. And the factors that you've got to weigh up with that is the time, but also then the economic cost, and also then the carbon cost as well. Because if you're manufacturing in Europe and you're shipping from the US, and you've only got 1 week to get it from there, you're gonna have to fly it. If you
Right.
can, if
Fast,
you
too.
can, fast, and you're probably not going to make it. In terms of the timelines question, if you've got the bigger projects, it's about managing the complexity that you're going to add into the project, and a lot of that comes down to time as a key factor. If you're talking about like smaller campaigns, then you inherently going to keep them simpler because you haven't got the unit volumes to be making the splitting up stock into different locations, to be doing the more complex logistics, because it's not going to make financial sense or operational sense. It's going to be too costly and too complex. I suppose the other big factor between if you're talking about sort of labels versus smaller artist campaigns or whatever else, it's actually whether how you're tying things into your other logistics. And actually, if you're holding catalogs of stock in different locations, utilizing what you have in your distribution, in your networks in different territories, and making sure that like you're utilizing the stock that's available rather than shipping around other things, other like especially manufactured stock or other things for campaigns. So it's trying to like look at the network that's available to you, the stock that's available to you, and utilize that rather than other stuff. Really.
And at what point does Ochre step in and offer help? Are you manufacturing things for people, or are people delivering things to you and then you're the logistics?
So there's a clear line that we draw, which is we don't do manufacture, we don't do marketing. We provide a low-level set of tools for people to use to augment their systems usually, or put it all together, everything that we've got, and we can run entire campaigns, entire stores end to end. But if you're there with a campaign, you say, well, we need fulfillment in the UK. Well, we can help with that specific element and hopefully advise you on how to manage some of the complexities around actually getting the stock into the right places at the right times, and the timelines and the difficulties with that.
Right. And in case people are interested, do you want to let people know a few of the folks that use Ochre?
So we work with everybody from artists to labels to label service companies, distributors. So artist campaigns can be anything from My Bloody Valentine to Aphex Twin. Labels, there's a lot of US folks like Partisan or Mexican Summer, but then Warp and Ninja Tune and Domino also use our fulfillment and retail services as well. And then we work with Pias and other label service companies and some merch companies like Terrible Merch and Allotment Pro in the UK. So it's a really different people using our services in quite different ways, in a very flexible way, I suppose.
Right. All worthy parts of the independent music community. Yeah. So for the two of you with labels, correct me if I'm wrong, I think Cam, Third Man do some of this. I don't know if Sub Pop have, but are there instances where you too have done fulfillment for like-minded labels when they've maybe needed it? I think I heard that somewhere along the way, that maybe you help ship out stuff for other folks. Well, certainly you obviously have your press too. So how does that work for you guys?
We don't really do a whole lot for other folks as far as like, utilizing our distribution services. I feel like everything that we have in-house is already, we have enough supply to do that, enough to go through our systems at the moment. But like with the pressing plant, we press for any number of like third-party clients. They do have to do like a certain mix of third-man projects and like third-party like buddy labels, or else maybe like someone in Detroit, someone local, or just somebody. I mean, you can submit a quote like request right now online and get an idea of what it would be, and they're taking in business all the time. So I would say the pressing plant does a little more of that than the label side, distribution end of things.
And you both are also labels that have your own standalone stores too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Has it been difficult navigating that through the pandemic and keeping them open? And I mean, Sub Pop has a store in an airport, for instance, as well as downtown Seattle. I mean, I guess it's been difficult even fulfilling your own stuff.
Yeah, we ran into a big problem with soft goods like T-shirts and that kind of stuff. But luckily, we have such a big catalog that even if we are out of some titles vinyl-wise, we're able to fill it with the other stuff. But in terms of getting soft goods, like our T-shirt blanks would change constantly. They'd be out of stock for months, or they would change in pricing. And just trying to kind of be nimble with that and switching to different things. So like we were doing screen printing for a while, but they were closing because of COVID. And then if someone got sick, they would close down for a couple of weeks and then we'd need to figure out a new solution. So we tried, embroidering instead for a little bit to see if that would, get something a little quicker, and maybe also just opening that up to see if our customers were into that. And same with things like hats. Like we ran into a problem, just delays getting that. So we're like, okay, what if we tried bucket hats? And again, just like being nimble and able to kind of switch
Right.
things around.
Yeah.
Did they like the embroidering? That's like I've never heard of someone
Oh yeah,
doing that. That's
so we did a
crazy.
slight embroider on the hoodies. Yeah, it's been going well.
Cool.
Yeah, it was
Wow.
fun to also try out, and then you get to meet new folks who are doing that because we try to do everything local as much as we can with screen printing and whatnot and embroidery.
Do the physical stores give any opportunities for fulfillment in other ways, like click and collect or other things?
You can. I mean, if you put in like we have like an online store, of course, and like if you are local and put in your order notes, like I'd like to pick this up in the shop. Usually, like the shipping manager would, facilitate that. It's not something that we offer as like advertising it or whatever, but yeah, we do offer it for people. Yeah.
Need a gift on the way out of town?
Exactly. Yeah, I know, totally.
Yeah.
Were there any projects that either of you just said, look, we can't do this during this tough time? We had to turn down this crazy bundle idea. It's just not something we could possibly do. And you've delayed till putting out till now. I mean, I hear people postponing albums, but mostly around lack of touring opportunity or certainty around touring.
Yeah.
But have there been any projects where you've had to say, oh, we can't do this right now, we're gonna have to wait?
For us, I don't think there was. It was more, what you're talking about. Like, there's a band that like they are a live band or like they're a live artist, and it would be essential to see their show to get the record, or like they go so hand in hand. That's just something that we had to push back and talk to the artist about that. The one thing that comes to mind, this is not so much like a challenge, but like at the very beginning of our lockdown, we partnered with like a brewery, a restaurant, and a winery in town, and offered like vinyl bundles for like, because people are doing curbside, 6-pack pickups and stuff. So we just like, we were like, well, we have to, figure out something. So we launched that at the very beginning of the lockdown, which, it wasn't like a crazy sale, but it was definitely like fun and cool advertising. And like, they were like a lot of times like friendly kind of like restaurants, or like we would know, the chef or something like that. So
Sure.
It's just kind of a fun way to, work together during a difficult time.
Right. So interesting, more local type
Yeah.
scenarios rather
Yeah.
than something on a grander scale.
In Detroit and in Nashville. Yeah.
Right. Well, question for all three of you, really. The demand for really amazing looking vinyl and beautiful packages and things is obviously through the roof. People still, they want something tangible. How do you deal with when that stuff gets messed up in delivery? What I mean, fans get upset, and rightfully so, when maybe you've paid, $40-50 to buy something and then another 25 or whatever to have it delivered, and it shows up and then corners all bent off or whatever. Do you have any secret sauce you want to?
Well,
Still.
keeping a percentage back is generally the best option.
Right.
Have 5% that you, or even 10%, depending on it, and make sure that you can resupply those people. Otherwise, you're refunding and creating bad will. So that's probably the main thing I'd say. The other thing is like actually running trials on your packaging, testing stuff, because you'll get particular, if you're doing complex products, things that you've not tried before, then doing trial runs on your on particular packaging in the post and actually seeing whether you are about to head into something where you're going to send 1,000 of them out and create chaos. You can cut it off at the first hurdle, really.
Yeah. What about numbered? This gets into tricky territory. What if I got number 3 out of 200 and it's damaged? I want a replacement.
Yeah.
What do I get?
Yeah, we don't do too much numbered, thankfully. So
Good
that
move.
doesn't, come in too much play. But the issue becomes with box sets with the shipping, and if things get dinged, and then we'll sometimes try to send a new one, but we just can't guarantee at a certain point that it's not going to. So we do things like offering coupons for a future discount, or else if they want a discount off of the box that they got, or if they want to return it, but just trying to offer a little something else so that they continue coming back as well.
We've been doing, setting a percentage aside for sure. I think that's like, the best kind of remedy here. But we've also been keeping, like, if there's any like extra components from the pressing plant, and they're like, hey, we're going to throw this in recycling. We'll just ask they send them down to us for the first few weeks after a release when there's like a heavy, volume of stuff shipping, and have them send that down. Then we can do, one-off replacements if it's just a jacket. Then one thing that we do that is kind of, I feel like, specific to how our business model is set up is if we do have, after we've cycled through all the returns and exchanges and whatnot, if we do have leftover limited stock, we have like a fan club exclusive web store, and we'll put that up for the, after this product is already sold out, we'll put it up on the fan exclusive web store, and they go pretty quickly there too.
Right. How do you, when the pandemic happened, we were all much nicer to each other, right? At the beginning there, we were all in deep shit, and everyone was, hey, how you doing? How you feeling? Everyone's nice. I'm not sure that's continued. So I'm wondering, how is communicating with the fans been? Actually, maybe the better way to ask it is, how do you feel fans now are understanding and taking the news that the piece of vinyl they just bought, it's actually going to be like a 6-month wait before they really get it? What's the general vibe you're feeling from fans on the delays that inevitably are going to happen while we still get through all this?
Totally. I feel like we've been really lucky where as long as we're communicative about what's happening, they're very positive in their response, and folks will often just like, hey, thanks so much for letting me know, and then like share a little tidbit about Sub Pop that they love, which has been really awesome and heartwarming, especially during the pandemic. We were getting a lot of folks who I think just wanted that community and wanted to reach out. So that was super positive. And every once in a while we do get the disappointed customer, but we do our best by, if the vinyl is delayed, but we'll keep the release date, we'll provide downloads on the day of the actual release, and we let them know. And so I think as long as it's not a surprise that something's going to be delayed, like day of, people are very open and receptive to that. Yeah. Because I think everyone just kind of knows it's not specific to one label. It's just like what's going on right now.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah, I totally agree. I think as long as you have good communication, that just is the biggest Band-Aid that you can have for people. I don't know if there's like really anything else that, we've learned over the course of everything. I feel like people, again, we're all going through this like thing universally, right? And so it's like everyone kind of had more understanding. But one thing that we've learned is just to be in good communication, and if there's squeaky wheels, especially like on social media, just like getting to that immediately, addressing it, and redirecting them towards the proper channel. That was kind of a bigger one that we learned in the past couple of years.
Sure. With the flip side of it, of course, that the fans might be upset, and if the fans are upset and the artists see that the fans are upset, then you have the artists being upset too, and it's got to make your life more complicated.
Totally. I think also, and oftentimes artists will also communicate the delay, like also through Bandcamp messaging, we can get them to push something through there.
But they also need to provide accurate messaging as well.
Exactly.
Correct and accurate messaging.
Totally.
But, I think that this is all just like, what this highlights too is just like how great it is to have customer service like in-house and just down the hallway from anyone else in, whether it's shipping or even just like management folks. It's really great because everyone can be lockstep in what the problems are, so they can figure out what the solutions will then, be.
Sure. The one thing I'd add on this point is customer attitudes have definitely changed over the last 2 years. With pandemic aside, everyone obviously's attitudes shifted throughout that period a lot, but there's an acceptance now that there wasn't a while ago that the industry is struggling with pressing delays. Fans are aware of that and they're accommodating that. And it's made customer support, I think, generally for our team a lot easier. But I don't know that it's overall, I think there's sort of undercurrents that are probably quite negative within that they might well be changing purchasing habits because of their awareness, and making buying decisions that not making buying decisions, not purchasing stuff that they would have previously, because there's such an awareness of the times that you're going to have to wait, which is probably pushing away from D2C and more towards physical retail, which for labels is not, or for physical retail is not necessarily a bad thing, but from our point of view, it's not helping much.
Yeah. You'll know better than the rest of us here. Has the Brexit shitstorm settled, or is it still really messy out there with, people getting records mailed back to them because it didn't have the right label stuck on it, and people ended up paying crazy taxes for something that they didn't think they have to, and all of that. Where are we at?
This has been a evolving situation, but it is generally getting better, I would say. There's been so many changes over the last sort of 18 months, with changes in EU tax rules and changes in obviously like the import and customs side of things. And there is now a route to get stock into Europe from the whole world, really, using the IOS scheme, that does actually now start to work. It's taken almost 12 months for the whole supply chain to get aligned on it, from customs to carriers to shipping, like shipping label producing companies, like technology side of it. And it's actually now starting to work in, we're talking 90% of cases now, but that's up from 50, 60% of cases working, 6 months ago. So it's getting much better. But there's still big caveats on that. Those sort of scheme, that the IOS scheme is only working for orders under 150 euros, which is okay for most D2C. Sometimes it's not though. And the costs of managing all this stuff have gone up, and the shipping prices are going up, and so it's stable now, but it's inferior to what it was previously, I'd say.
I think part of the problem for a lot of independent labels is just not knowing where to look.
Yeah.
Like there was no one rule book, like, oh, it's all changed. Cool, I'll look at rule 3 and put stuff in the mail.
The answer to that is that nobody really understood it and nobody knew.
Yeah.
Right up until the last moment, and even beyond, Brexit going over the line, and even after that, the answers were that there was no real plan and no real, like, kind of, you talking to the carriers and talking to even, the very core people. The answer was wait and see. We still are waiting and seeing.
Sure.
Now we've worked through the end of that, really. But yeah, it wasn't easy.
Yeah. Rebecca, any countries that are really, really great for you for physical sales outside of the States? Where are your kind of most popular markets?
Over the last year, we launched a store in London. That's our first ex-US store. So the UK business has been growing like crazy since then. We have a physical storefront and are doing warehousing there, and have like a UK EU web store. So I'm super stoked that Brexit is starting to level out for you, because it is absolutely sucking for us right now. But we're learning. It's a learning curve. I mean, that was kind of like the last piece of the puzzle when launching an ex-US shop, is figuring out, how do we stock it now? That's part of our new challenge is, and we're doing like sea freight a lot, which is, it still exists. And yeah, so we're using that to do big restocks for catalog when we get them in stock. So it's, I don't even remember the original question, but
so neither do I. But it makes me wonder: do either of you press in other countries too? If you have if ex-USA, there's enough business somewhere else. Do you consider pressing in Europe or?
Yeah, we do some pressing in Europe too. So for those territories and for distributing over there, it's just a little bit easier. Also environmentally, that's also a big push for us.
Right.
We've done a couple, but we're still trying to rely primarily on our plant and keeping that in-house. So it was for some White Stripes titles that we're catalog.
Sorry?
Yeah, right. But there was just some catalog stuff that we needed to be distributed in Europe. It was just it was easier, but we're kind of neurotic about QC in the plant. So it was only when we could like get product mailed to us, we could make sure that it was consistent with what we're used to putting out there, that we were like, okay, like we're good.
Right. There's been a lot of emphasis at this conference, and rightly so, on the environmental impact of the music business. Mm-hmm. Dan, you want to talk to any ways in particular that your company or other folks, steps people have taken, steps people here can take to reduce the impact, especially of doing things like making vinyl, which obviously
Yeah,
can be controversial.
I mean, from our side, obviously we've got our own warehouse. Within that, all packaging materials are recyclable, except the wrap we use for palletizing stuff, which we haven't found a solution on that.
And is that easy to find? Can you just insist with the people you're working with, hey, this needs to be recyclable, or is that something?
I mean, we've done a lot of work to get it and we kind of manufacture all of our cardboard products ourselves we're not manufacturing ourselves, but we go to providers to get that manufactured to our specifications, and there's quite a lot of work gone into making that happen. I think though that it's also increasing. There's more availability of options. I mean, there's one of the things that was added recently was at some point last year was a mailer for t-shirts, which is all like kind of paper, which is much better than the poly bags that we used to use. So it's kind of these things are becoming more prevalent across e-commerce as a whole, and that's a good thing. I think the other thing that we've tried to do, and it's becoming a bit more of an approach for us, is really not. We don't prioritize our warehouse as a fulfillment option for people. It's not about that. It's really looking at where stock is and trying to find ways that we can ship it from where the stock is at that point. So integrating with lots of other warehouses around the world, integrating with distributors, integrating with fulfillment houses where the stock already is, and trying to make sure it ships from there. Because one of the biggest wastes we see is taking it from a distribution warehouse into an e-commerce fulfillment warehouse a few hundred miles away is just a waste of resources and a waste of obviously the on all sides. And then the other aspect of that is on timelines, as I was talking about before. Just like trying to ensure that if you can get things to go by sea freight, the savings that you make in terms of carbon cost there is just so enormous.
Right.
And then you get into a debate about what service level you should provide to customers in that sense. Do you let something go late and say, well, I'm sorry, customers, you're not going to get this for another 6 weeks, but we don't think it's justifiable to air freight these 4 tons of vinyl. What's the right decision to make? And it's not something that we can't make that decision for people, but we think it's got to be considered, really.
Sure. Any steps Third Man or Subhut want to share about?
I mean, I think, Dan hit it on the head. It's packaging materials, being picky about that, and choosing what might be what's better for the environment. Going with sea freight, doing being as intentional about logistics as you can. And then for us, it's been again the UK shop and having a dedicated warehouse where we can ship freight and then send individual orders from there. I feel like that's been the biggest for us.
Cool.
Yeah, the manufacturing on the EU has been big, so that we're not shipping then so much across. And then also we've been experimenting with the reground vinyl a little bit and recycled vinyl with a few titles just to see how that's going, specifically in the EU.
And the results are?
So far, so good.
Yeah.
It was so beautiful to open them up too and to see different ones, but it's kind of hard too when you have a customer base that might be expecting the same color for each one.
Right.
But at a certain point, it's kind of...
Cool. Well, good. All right. I think that's pretty much all we had to chat about, but we're here for a few more minutes if any of you have questions for our panel of experts. At the back first, and then there was one over here somewhere.
Thanks for the great panel. One of the things that my label shipping department runs into that's problematic for us is packages going overseas to Europe or wherever, for example, and either getting held up in customs, getting lost, or getting returned to us. And, then the customer writes us an angry email saying that the postman never left a notice. I'm sure you guys deal with this all the time. Generally, what we've been doing is just sending a replacement, but then we lose the cost of our shipping, we lose the vinyl, so we're really taking a hit on this. And I was wondering if you guys had any insight or how you handle situations like this when it comes up.
At Third Man, we just go totally psycho mode on all the customs invoices. We'll look up specific layouts that might be more beneficial territory by territory. which is, annoying, but if it gets it there and it's one shipment instead of two, that's, like you said, it's huge. It's a big potential or offset of cost or expense. So, that's been like a little hack of ours in the past few years.
Cam will sell you some customs templates.
Yeah, for sure.
At a reasonable price after this presentation.
I have a table outside.
Yeah, unfortunately, a similar boat, and we'll do what you do and send a replacement. Something with like a box set is a little trickier, but if we do have them distributed somewhere in their area, I might look and point them to a record store that they may be able to pick it up at a little more direct. Yeah.
The only thing I'd add is if you've got a good record of what your damage and loss and returns rate is for all your packages, and then you can look for trends and then try and solve those trends. So, if you find territories where you're getting this is very high, then implement tracking only. If there's places where and then you look for the problems and try and solve those problems. Whereas if you look at your entire returns rate and it's whatever percentage, it's not giving you much data. It's not giving you much to work on. So really, like looking at the numbers and digging into it gives you actions you can take at that point. Really.
Thanks for the question.
My question was also about overseas shipping. When, as a small label that does a decent amount of business in Europe and UK, trying to think about when to make sense to open a second store and how to stock that and limited products and how to also then market, that second store. Is that, Third Man is open up in London, but before that, did you have a store, an overseas store? And the same kind of question for Sub Pop too.
We did not. This is our first kind of foray into it. It's been a lot of learning, honestly. It wasn't, I feel like there wasn't a moment or a specific like catalyst for like, okay, now is the perfect time to open. Because if anything, like Brexit hit and then we were like, well, this went from being our EU warehouse to our UK warehouse, sometimes EU, it's like not quite as useful because of that, unfortunately. But still great to have it over there. It's amazing to have the shop there. Like there's like kind of a rich history with a lot of like the artists on the label and support in the UK, kind of like sparking their career to new heights and whatnot in the US. So there wasn't like a specific like reason that we did it, but we're still kind of in the throes of learning, how to do it best. But we've had a lot of help along the way, which has been great. And, just talking to people over there and figuring out best practices has been really helpful.
Yeah, we're similar. We've been talking for a really long time about doing a D2C specifically for the EU, but then when Brexit and the pandemic, it's just been kind of hard to time that out. But then now it's definitely feeling a little more urgent just with the shipping rates just being so crazy. It's kind of hard to justify folks spending that much on shipping. So it's kind of like, as he said, just a lot of learning and talking to folks specifically in the EU and seeing how that model could work over there.
There's probably a decent gap between, hey, I sell a lot of records in the UK and hey, I can open a store in the UK. So yeah. Well, I mean, if you are, put my Bandcamp hat on for a second, if you are a Bandcamp user, you can set up so that you're shipping from multiple origins and you can use services like Ochre or whatever fulfillment company you like in order to take orders in that specific territory that's not the US, and Bandcamp figures out where those orders ship from. And I'm sure it's the same with other similar platforms you might
it's the same for Ochre.
might use.
Yeah. And I guess the thing with that is if you're using a platform where you can sell from a single storefront to multiple locations, you don't have to think about it as setting up a store. You can have a campaign, and this campaign, we think we're going to have a volume on it. So you do set up an agreement with somebody to ship it domestically in that region. And you can do it product by product, campaign by campaign, and build up to it and see how it works. And then at some point, you put your whole catalog out there, you start stocking it. But with that is the operational overhead of managing that, which shouldn't be underestimated. It's like, it has to be done like it is work.
Sure. the selling point obviously is lower shipping for your fans. So hopefully you can kind of even them out.
Yeah.
Sorry, I think you come directly back over here. This is more of just like a fun little business savvy kind of question. So as all of us in this room know, not every pressing sells the number of copies that we wish it would. And sometimes we're sitting on a few extra copies of things. Other than, slashing prices and doing a sale or something like that, what are some clever little tactics that you may have encountered to get rid of extra copies of stuff that you have lying around?
We're lucky with when we have our retail spaces, so we're able to kind of do something specific in those stores. So if, say, there's other bands that sound like it, we could do like a recommended kind of section. We could, if there's a theme, we could put a bunch of different artists together. Like if we want to do a spotlight on, say, Seattle artists, things like that. I think we have the luxury of doing in a retail space, but could translate as well online if you wanted to highlight. Just think of something that ties a group together that could help amplify that one that's maybe not selling as well.
Yeah, I would say big picture, like bundles, if you can bundle it with something else. Small picture, I mean, this is the first thing that came to my mind when you said it. Like doing the thing where you like take a record out and then you flip, like you cut the LP jacket and then flip it inside out and like do some custom art on it or something. Like we've done that before. It was cool.
Signed by Jack White.
Yeah.
These things are easy to do.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Cool. Well, thanks for coming, everyone. Hope it's useful. We're here. If you want to come say hi.